everybody. Thank you for joining today. I never know which side to look into. I think it's this one. Hello and good morning. I'm having a cup of Earl Grey tea. And welcome to today's live stream. Let me just tell you real quick what we're gonna do today. All right, so we'll do 3 things and we'll end up with painting a wreath, something like this. So it's fall themed, and this live stream today is part of Aloha 23 September, my current challenge on Instagram. And before we tackle the wreath, we'll do 2 things. So first I want to explore with you how to come up with different layouts for a wreath. So for example, you know, where would you put the biggest elements? Where would you put the flowers and the leaves? And for that, I think it's very convenient to start with little thumbnail sketches. So we'll do that first. And then next, we'll practice the single elements. So we'll practice the leaves here and the florals. And then step 3, we'll just put it all together. All right. Hi, Mom. All right. No, it's not raining. Does it sound like it's raining? Can you hear me? I hope the sound is okay. So let me know in case the sound is off or you have trouble hearing me. I hope everything's good, and yeah, let's get started. I'm gonna turn around the camera. All right. Oh, hi Sylvie. Oh, it's raining over at Sylvie's place. Okay. So I'm going to turn the camera around and then put it in my other phone holder. So today I tried to be a little bit more prepared with all my phone holders. So let's see how that goes. Okay. So here we go. All right. I'm just gonna get settled here, putting everything in place. Okay, I think I can go closer a little bit. All right. Yeah, as I said, please let me know if there's any, if there's any trouble with the sound, or if I should go closer. Okay. So as for materials, I have my Khadi sketchbook today, the same one I used last time for last week's live stream. This is 100% cotton rag paper, handmade. It's like a sponge, honestly. The paper is so thick and I do love it. However, the only disadvantage is that I feel like the colors fade a little bit. So once they're dry, they're not as brilliant as while you paint with them. But other than that, I really love it. And I have my Aloha watercolors with this month's palette. Plus, there's a little hula queen that snuck in there. Which actually, you know what? Wouldn't that look great? Just adding a little gold accents to the wreath, to the wreath. I think that's a good idea. I have my colored pencils. So these are water soluble watercolor pencils, which means you draw with them and then you can reactivate them with water and paint with them almost as if they were watercolors. I have 2 brushes today. I have my number 8 quill brush and a smaller round brush. This is a size 4. Just in case. I actually did both of these wreaths with this big one, with the number 8. So let's see how it goes today. And I have some, just, I don't even know what brand this was. It's just some thin mixed media paper for the first two steps of our project today. And I have a pencil. And I think I'm gonna actually do the sketches with a fine liner, just so you can see it better. Usually I would actually use just a pencil. I sometimes even do my sketches digitally on my iPad. So it really depends. Like if I wanna, you know, just lie down, sit down on the couch, sometimes I just work with my iPad to do the sketching. But yeah, honestly, I mean, I just love pen and paper. So how about you guys? Do you prefer to do your sketches digitally, or do you prefer pen and paper? Okay, so for the first step, we're gonna start with figuring out what our wreath should look like. And as I mentioned before, I would usually, usually I would use a pencil, and I would make my sketches like this size, like really just super fast, like this would be it. Done. But just for you guys to be able to see it better. Let's figure this out this way. And I'm just gonna place another circle down here so we can just see how we are liking two different varieties. Okay, so first of all, your wreath could be completely round, like this one here on the left side, or it could be more oval shaped. So you gotta make up your mind, which basic shape would you like? So if you want to work round, then this would be perfect. If you want to work with an oval, you just have to change your circle a little bit. I always find it easier to draw from top to bottom like this. Like if I have to do it the other way around like this is totally tricky. So I usually move my paper in the direction where my hand feels more comfortable drawing. Okay, I'm just looking over to your comments, and yes, pencil and paper definitely preferred. Yeah, same here. And Sylvia wants to know what the colors are of my pencils. Okay, hold on. I have crimson 530. This is spring green. Honestly, it looks more like matcha, doesn't it? Or moss green. And this one is Sicilian yellow. So I can just write down the numbers. And okay. And I think these are really close to this month's palette, these three colors. Okay. All right. Back to our little sketches. So as I said, your basic shape could be round or it could be oval. And then of course you also have to make up your mind, do you want your wreath to go all around or do you want it open? So this one here is open on two sides. This one here is open on one side, kind of open, I didn't put any more leaves in there. And this one here, like an oval shape, is open here at the bottom. So you have lots of different options to decorate your wreath. So let's say you want your wreath to be round and you want to place elements all over. So I would always start with the hero elements. If you want to add big flowers, and I usually work with an uneven number. So I would place them like this, and then you can fill your in-between spaces with some leaves. Now you can see that I'm already working asymmetrically. I mean, you're totally fine with placing your elements all around and make it fully symmetrical. I personally prefer, I guess I find it more interesting to put my elements in a more asymmetrical way. So these are blossoms in full bloom. And then for a little more visual interest, you could also add some from the side. And some leaves. And another thing, I usually don't put anything at the like 12 o'clock. If you think of it like a clock, you know, 12, 3, 6, 9, then I usually don't put a hero element up here because to me it would look like it's kind of hung up there like a picture frame. So I'm not sure if I'm explaining it correctly, but I just find the flow better if there's nothing up here and I place my elements more around in this area. And then for balance, so now we have 4 elements. For balance, you could think about, let me put maybe some smaller elements that are still florals, but a bit smaller around here, just to create some balance with this one. So we have something going on here, a diagonal, and then something in here. And for me personally, I would probably not put anything in this area. I would just probably leave it open. But if you wanted to put something there, I think I would just do some leaves. So as you can see, I'm working a bit with my intuition. This is going to be a lot more easy for you once you practice this kind of sketching a lot. And I also advise you to just not do one sketch. You can do 10 or, I mean, as many as you want, and try different layouts. Maybe you want something that is super balanced out with a lot of hero elements and then just some simple leaves in between. A very basic wreath. And that looks totally fine too. So you can start with something very basic and then maybe make variations that are a bit more asymmetrical. And once you're done with the round shape, how about we try something that has a different shape? Like I said before, you could do something with an oval. Thanks, Mom. So let's try to put this composition on our oval, and we'll also add another little element here, which would be the mushroom. Because yeah, we are in September, and this month we have fall as our theme, fall florals. So I thought we could just add a little mushroom in here. Okay, I have this flower going down, adding some smaller flowers. So I'm basically just doing the same thing as I did over here, just with my oval shape. Okay, now I have 2 elements that are pretty big, and I would like to put another big element here, but instead of doing a flower, let's put the mushroom here. I'm not sure what this part of the mushroom is called. The mushroom hat, right? So the mushroom hat is actually pretty big too. So again, you already have 3 big elements. 1, 2, 3. Very nice. and it's already balancing out. Like, you look at this, you have a nice little triangle going on. So the eye of the viewer will just hop around these three elements here, which would be totally enough for a balanced composition. And to fill your wreath, you could just add some more leaves, and then you can also do variations with the leaves, meaning bigger, smaller, different shapes. Could add another mushroom in here. All right. Okay, so now we have 1, 2, 3 big elements. We have some rather big leaves here. So make sure you have something on the other side as well that's not too small. So you want something like a flower from the side. And I think this would be enough for this wreath. Everything else, everything you put in between can just be small little elements, small leaves, little grasses. But this is just for filling. This is just filling material. All right. Do you guys have any questions so far? Is there anything that's not clear or I should explain a little more? Just let me know in the comments. All right. So I'm going to put this to the side and let's move over to practicing some of the elements that we'll include in the wreath. Oh, I'm glad to hear that, Sylvie. All right. So anytime you have a question, just don't hesitate. I am very happy to explain everything if I can. All right, so for our wreath today, we have the Hawaiian flower, the ko'oloa ula, and we have it from the front and from the side. We have the mushrooms and then different kinds of leaves. So I'll say we start with the easy stuff. Let's start with just some simple leaves. I have my quill brush, size 8. I have my mixing palette and my colors, and I have 2 jars of water. I use one to rinse my brush and then the other one to rinse it again to make it really clean and to always have 1 jar with clean water. Okay, leaves don't have to be green necessarily, but let's make them green today. All right, I have a few big leaves in my wreath, and for these, just start with your brush and then press all the way down and ease up again. You can do this with a round brush too. And depending on what size brush you use, how soft it is, you will get different shapes. So with a softer brush, the belly of your leaf might be thicker, broader, and with a smaller brush that's maybe more elastic, your leaf might be a bit skinnier. And you can always add a second stroke if you want your leaf to be shaped a bit differently. So I mentioned that last week as well. Try to not hold your brush like you would hold a writing pen. Always try to hold your brush a bit more upright. It's going to be tricky in the beginning. You won't know how to put your arm and how to put your hand, but honestly, it gives you so much more movement opportunities. So you can just do so much movement with, you know, very easily once you get used to it. So just practice holding your brush and not putting your hand on the paper, but actually lifting it off the paper and only put this part of your arm on the table. So not even the elbow, just a bit in front of the elbow, around here. This is the part I put on the table, and I have my wrist soft and easy. And then I can do all sorts of strokes, pretty much in all directions. But again, I say that a lot. Try to find out which direction you paint best, and then, you know, just move your paper accordingly. Sorry about that, guys. Somebody tried to call me. I don't even know that person. So much for the leaves. Very simple, and you can incorporate these kind of shapes in all your wreaths. I love that Sylvia and my mom have this, they have this conversation going on right now. Okay. For the little small leaves, now it's really important to hold your brush more upright because you want to create a nice line. See, all I'm doing is like I'm just dipping my brush onto the paper, so to speak, and then I move my whole arm. See? I am aware that this is more difficult to do when you have an actual wreath you want to paint because you want to stay in the circle and you're not as free because you have your wreath and your circle there. But, you know, just for practice, just try. And it doesn't really matter where you place your stroke on the paper. Just try to get used to holding your brush in a different way than you're maybe used to. And then you'll see with some time, you will be able to hold it and just not even think about it anymore. So for the little grassy elements, I'm just softly stroking the brush like this, hardly touching the paper. And you can do something similar with some little oval shaped leaves. So I'm really drawing these. If you want to do those in a more painterly style, you can do the same movement I did up here, but just in a small way. And if you have tiny little leaves like that, this would be a good moment to switch your brush. So this is a size 4, this is a regular round brush. And it's gonna be much easier for you probably to do these tiny little leaves. Choosing your brush, I think, also depends on how fast you would like to work with your wreath, or in general, any kind of watercolor painting. If you want to work quickly, if you only have a few minutes, you really just want to sit down and paint something real quick, real loose, I would suggest you use a large brush and just one brush and do the whole thing in one go. If you have a little more time, or if you want to spend a little more time with all your details, you can switch in between brushes. In general, I really advise to not, I don't, yeah, no, I don't want to tell you what to do. It is more a suggestion or an idea from my own experience. the smaller the brush is that you use, the more you will get lost in your details. And if you want to practice loose florals, just use the bigger brush. Just try it. Even if it scares you at first, just try the bigger brush and try to work relatively quickly. Okay, so I'm gonna set my round brush to the side and let's go to the flower. I'm rinsing my brush. Okay, I'm grabbing some of my dark red. For the flower, you could do something very simple and just do really, just some oval petals like this. I'm just lazy now, not moving my paper, but you should definitely, and I will as well, because it's just too tricky to do this from a weird angle. A very basic shape for a flower. You can also let this dry and then add some details with some colored pencil later. If you don't want your flower to be blobby like this, and I mean this mostly in the sense that the color is going wherever it wants to, you can dry your brush and just remove some of the paint that's pooling and just create a base layer for your flower like this that's relatively evenly painted. So for me, I actually really love having the paint pool like this, and even, having these little drying edges, what I call the cauliflower effect. But yeah, that's really also a matter of preference. And if you start with a really light first layer, then of course you can add a second layer with more details. So again, it really depends on the style that you prefer. So it would be either something like this, where you would add more details later, or you would just do something very loose. Let the color do its thing, and just let this dry like this and be done with it. Maybe even, you could add a second color, like a yellow or so in the center. Or maybe the orange. Okay, so I can't work anymore on this one because it's still so wet, but you get what I mean. You would let this dry and then with a smaller brush add some details for this flower. And then for the flower on the side, again, you could do something similar to this, where you just very quickly, very loosely add your leaves like this, and then hold the brush upright again to add the stem in with very quick little strokes. You have to be quick for that one, otherwise it's going to be wobbly and too thick. If you want skinny lines, then you just have to work really quickly on these strokes. And again, for these kind of strokes, you will find that there is a direction for you that's easier to paint in. So for me, this is from right to left, like this. The other way around, from left to right, I find more tricky. You might not be able to see the difference here on camera, but I feel that it's more difficult. And if this is a bit over the top for you with this kind of flower, you can just also do something really simple. And done. You know, just something like this. And add a few of these flowers from the side to your wreath, and that would be totally fine. You're also using different colors for your wreath, so your florals could be very, very simple, and people would still be able to know that it's a flower because of the color. And again, I'm not saying there aren't any red leaves, but if all your leaves are green, then you know you would know that all the red parts of your paintings are flowers. So don't overthink the details. You know, sometimes you can just really work with very simple shapes, and our brains will translate immediately what we're looking at. Okay, I'm looking over to the comments. Sylvie says she did not know that. Which part? You mean the way to hold the brush? I just said so much in the last 2 minutes. I'm not really sure. Okay, I'm gonna pour myself a little more tea because this one is cold and I want some warm tea. I'm still drinking Earl Grey tea. It's one of my favorites. I just love it so much. You know, black tea in general, I love. And then whatever citrusy flavor you add, oh, I'm in. I really like it. I also really love Lady Grey. I think that's a mix of a green tea and a black tea and some lemon orange flavor. But it's super difficult to get here, unfortunately. So next time I go to Europe, I'm gonna buy like 4 pounds or so. Oh, that's better. Okay, and last, we'll do some mushrooms. Okay, Sylvie, now you can paint spirals? Yeah, right? Oh, now I get what you meant. And you know, you can translate that to any tool. Seriously, I mean, it's not just brushes. You can also, you can hold your pencil like that too. It's just really, it's a different way to approach drawing and painting, I think, to work with the movement of your whole arm, or at least, you know, with your whole wrist, and not just with your fingers and this very small frame of movement. And I also, you know, whenever I teach classes in person, I always start usually with people just having to take a pencil and do like big strokes with the whole arm. It just helps so much. Let's do some mushrooms. All right, so grabbing some of my orange. This is such a bright orange, oh my goodness. When Rita chose this month's palette, I thought the orange would just be a bit too bright. But honestly, it's kind of fun because the rest of the palette is a bit muted. The colors aren't that bright. So this one is great if you want to have a pop of color in your painting. You can do it with this orange for sure. Our mushrooms are a bit triangle shaped like this. So of course mushrooms have all different shapes, right? But I'm just saying the ones that I'm painting for our wreath today. And I just did the foot of the mushroom with one stroke. But of course you can just, you know, you can also draw your mushroom like this. And then we add a few details like that, kind of like an umbrella. And in order to make a nice blend here in the hat of the mushroom, you can drop in some yellow. And blend it with the orange. And again, just let the watercolor do its thing. Usually you don't have to help the watercolor along too much to blend because it just naturally wants to blend with the other color when it's still wet. Okay, here we go. These are gonna be the elements for our wreath today. So this was step 2. And now we combine these two. Okay guys, would you like to do a completely round wreath that's all the way closed, or do you want to do an oval one that may be open on one side? Let me know. Okay, I'm gonna get ready for whichever one you choose. The open one, open and oval, round and open. We have all different ones. Everything's fine. All right, I think round is winning. Okay, how about open one or closed? We'll do the round one, but all the way around, or should I make it open on one side? Round and open. Open. All right, let's do it. Okay, I'm just trying to arrange everything so you can still see the previous steps. Okay. Look at how thick these pages are. Ah, it's so wonderful. And they're not even either. Some are thinner than the others. So you never know what you're gonna get. So Melly is saying she's going to paint it on the last page of the sketchbook that you dedicated to the Aloha 23. Oh wait, is your sketchbook full then? Are you on your last page? Yay! Wow, that's so awesome. Okay. I just recently filled a sketchbook as well, and I just simultaneously love the feeling, and also I'm like, now I have to start a new one. Ah. So, Melly, if your sketchbook is full, we have another 2 months for the challenge. Are you gonna start a new tiny little one for the challenge? Okay, and Tanya says she loves the deckled edges here, and I do too. Honestly, that's one of the most favorite parts about handmade watercolor paper for me. When they leave the edges, they don't cut the edges, but leave them like this. It's so beautiful. I really want to do handmade paper, but not another thing. I'm telling you. There's so many things I would love to do. I made handmade paper once with the fibers of the mulberry tree. So this is a traditional way in Hawaii to make paper. And it was so great. I loved it so much. but the amount of space you need to store the paper, to dry the paper, and then, you know, when it rains, which it does all the time here, then what do? It just gets wet again, so I can't do it, but I loved it. Oh, right, we said open, so I did the, if you do the circle, just leave it open wherever you want to leave it open. So in our case, I think I'm gonna leave it open on this side. And yeah, talking and drawing, I tell you guys, it's not easy. But so you just draw the circle until the spot where you want to leave it open. Okay, and now you have the option to just slightly draw in where you want to place your hero florals. But you could also just take your sketch and just go ahead and start with painting everything in directly. So for me, I'm totally fine with just pretty much starting like this because I already have my sketch. But if you like, you could just, you know, very lightly, maybe even just make a little dot here in the position where you want to put your large florals and your mushroom. That could be enough. So large floral, and then maybe some small ones that are facing to the side. And maybe 2 dots where you want to leave the wreath open, like here. So again, this is totally a matter of preference. You can do a full sketch or kind of just like dots in the places that you feel like putting some elements, or you can just fly by the seats of your pants. I learned that expression from my husband. I love it. I'm trying to think how you would say that in German. Einfach mal drauf los. It doesn't have that fun ring to it, though. You know how in some languages you have an expression that is so funny and then you translate it and it just kind of loses all its glamour. It's just not as, it's not as funny anymore. So I know because sometimes I talk to my mom and she says something in Japanese and I have no idea what she's saying, and then she's trying to translate it and then it's like, no. It just doesn't work. Okay, so I'm not sure why I mixed the brown first, because I will actually start with the large florals. So we'll need our dark red. And I'm gonna do my florals in the very loose style, just letting the watercolor flow wherever it wants to. Okay, this is number 1. I put another one down here. If you start your floral with more water and less pigment, less paint, you'll end up having more options to work with your flower. Meaning if you use a lot of paint and pigment, you know, your floral will be very opaque. If you use a lot of water, then for example, you can add another color You can add details with colored pencil. And if you want to remove some of your pigment, like I'm doing now, rinse your brush and dry it on a paper towel. And then with that thirsty brush, remember guys, we had that last week when my mom asked what a thirsty brush is. So with your thirsty brush, you can mop up some of the pigments again. Okay, next I'm gonna mix some of my red with my orange, just to mute it a little bit. And I'll add some of the smaller florals from the side. And I'm doing the simple ones here. And for my big florals, I just want to add a little bit of the very bright orange in the center. And now, because I mopped up some of my dark red pigment, the orange is more visible. So over here and down here, you can see because I used more pigment, the orange kind of melts into the red. And that's totally fine too. It's just really up to you, to your preference. How do you want your florals to look? Okay, so we have our two big florals. We have one small one. Let me add another one here from the side. This one could be more of this loose style. Ko'oloa ula from the side. Okay, this turned out pretty big. So now I have 3 large elements here. I wanted to do this a bit smaller. So if you haven't gotten to this point yet, try to make it a bit smaller. Okay, let's do the mushroom next. Pretty bright orange. And I'll place the hat here. My mom's asking what I said about her. I talk too fast. So I'm gonna say this in German because that's a bit easier for her to understand. Also, liebe Taka-chan, ich habe gesagt, wenn man was in einer Sprache sagt, also irgendeinen lustigen Spruch zum Beispiel, dann ist es teilweise schwierig, das in eine andere Sprache zu übersetzen. Es funktioniert einfach nicht so gut. Also zum Beispiel, wenn du auf Japanisch Betsubara sagst, dann kann man das sehr schwierig in andere Sprachen übersetzen. All right, and back to English. So, have a little mushroom here, and I'm adding some of my yellow ochre to the hat, and just let it blend. Just quickly switching to my smaller brush here because this one holds so much water. That I'm having pools and pools of paint. All right, so. And let's add a small one next to it. All right, we have our main elements. And even though it might look a bit unbalanced at this point, you can balance it out by adding your other elements now. So adding leaves, maybe even adding more florals. It depends a little bit on what your wreath looks like at this point. So you can look at it and try, you know, to see if the diagonals are covered. So in my case, they actually are. So I think it is actually pretty balanced. But I want to make sure that when I add the leaves that it stays balanced. So I think at this point, I don't want to add anything too big anymore. So no more large florals or no really large leaves. Okay, so just gonna add some more details to my little flower here. So I have my little stamen and dots both on this flower and on this one over here. I'm rinsing my brush because I'm gonna start with another color now. Ah, James is making coffee. I don't know if you can hear the machine, but this is the coffee machine in the background. Coffee would be good too. I usually start with tea and then I have coffee. Okay, the color I have here is a Van Dyke brown, which is a very dark brown. It's one of my favorite in a basic palette because I usually don't use black and I tend to use a very dark brown like this one instead, or a dark indigo. So either of these two. And with this color you can also mute all the bright colors. So let's say you have a very bright yellow, you mix it with just a little bit of this Van Dyke brown and you'll have kind of like a muted yellow, light brown. So for the little grasses here, please feel free to use a different brush because I know that it's it can be a bit tricky to hold the brush like this. And also make sure you don't dip your hand into the other elements. Try to stay close to the circle that you drew, but you don't have to stay on the line all the time. You can go off the line and even, you know, start a little branch a bit off like this. As long as you kind of wrap your wreath around the line more or less, it's gonna be fine. Okay, so I'm gonna stay with my color and add a few leaves. Just gonna rearrange things a little bit here. Oh, one more thing. If you don't want your watercolors to mix, especially if you don't want your leaf color to go into your flower color, you have to let everything dry before you continue with your leaves. But for me personally, I really love that, so I don't mind everything to mix. You could also wait a little bit for your flowers to dry, so it's not sopping wet like this one, but it's kind of like half dry, and you'll have the blend effect without risking that your whole flower is just gonna turn into a brown lake. Okay, I will add more details to this part, but I usually start with just putting one element all around and then looking at everything and deciding where I'll put more elements or more details. So you can also do a little variation in your leaf, like it's kind of like bent over a little bit. Another tip for your wreath is to place some of the elements on top of the line. So rather than staying left and right off the line, you want to place elements on the line as well, kind of like those flowers. So you can do the same with the leaves. Okay, so like this one here, I'm putting the leaf on the line rather than putting it left or right of it. I think it gives the whole thing a more organic feel. I'm just reading the comment about the coffee. Yeah, I really want coffee now. Everybody's talking about coffee. Haven't finished my tea though. Now I have. I wonder if I can ask James to bring me some coffee. What do you think? Should I ask? Okay, I just dropped in some dark red on top of my mushroom heads, just for a little more interest there. And now I'm gonna look at my composition so far. I'm liking it. I think it's pretty balanced, but I wanna add some more small elements, kind of like up here. So we can introduce another color as well. I mean, I kind of like this vibe here. It's a bit more muted, it's more dark. But I think from this palette, the green would look really fabulous too. So let's add some tiny leaves, you know, something like this in green. So I don't know if you guys can hear that, but our guest just returned and is now talking to James, so I'm not gonna interrupt them to have some coffee. All right, but I'll have some more tea. Okay, for those of you who are painting along, how's your wreath coming along? Are you happy? How's it going? If you're struggling with something, just let me know. And I can try and explain again, or, you know, maybe If you're stuck, you can also just snap a picture and post it in your stories, and we can just discuss together how to continue from there. So this is true for all of my live sessions. If you're participating and you get stuck in some part of the process, feel free to just ask me. I'm always available on Instagram. I might not answer right away because we have a lot of time difference between most places here. Like Hawaii, Germany is like 12 hours, so I might not answer right away, but I will get back to you. Okay, let me just plug in my charger cable to my phone just to make sure. Oops. Okay, here we go. Melly, you've ruined your last page. You can just glue it together. Einfach die Seiten zusammenkleben. Ah, it's going well for Sylvie. Yeah, I mean, you guys, I would do these sessions in German too, but we do have some folks here from the United States, so I'll do it in English. But the lovely Miss Nice Day, Tanya, and I will have a session in German next week, so hopefully you guys have time to join us. It's gonna be next Thursday. All right, so let's just add some little tiny green leaves here. Let's do something like this. As you can see, I switched to my little number 4 round brush. Okay, and some skinny ones down here. And instead of adding leaves, you can also just add some little dots and circles. I do that a lot in those spots where I feel I want to add something but not really a leaf, because that would be too much. So you could work with that kind of very simplistic element as well. And then over here, I'm gonna let this one wind around like this, kind of like a vine, and add some tiny leaves. So I feel like these leaves here, those tiny green ones, they're kind of strong. I mean, they're very opaque. I didn't use a lot of water over here. So I want a bit of a balance over on this side. So I'm gonna grab some more of my green, a little less water, and I'm just gonna add some dots over on this side, very opaque ones. So this is really just to counterbalance my opaque little leaves here. Okay, so let's look at this. At this point, I really feel that this could almost be done already. There's a lot going on. It is pretty balanced, I think. I like that this is open here. It gives it a bit more room to breathe. I don't like my line here that I did because, yeah, talking and not paying attention. So instead of having a line there, at least what I could do is just put dots there instead of the line. Okay, I'm looking over to your comments, and Melly says that, I'm sorry, actually I'm calling you Melly. Maybe you want to be called Melanie. That she likes detailed sketches before she paints a wreath. See, it's so interesting for me how different we all are with our approaches to creating artwork. Some of us really like to plan it out, to do the details, to do the sketching, and then just paint, which I totally understand. I mean, I get it. You want to do the sketch and you want to do all the work first, and then you just sit down and you don't have to think about it anymore. You can just paint. So for me, I guess I'm more like the go with the flow type of person where I do a little sketch, but I do it very rough, and then I just go for it. Which naturally also means that, you know, a lot of my stuff doesn't come out the way that I envision it at all. Like, it's so different. And you have to be able to live with that. Okay, Melli passt? Okay, Melli, sehr gut. Okay, looking at my wreath, the same thing that I just said with the green being very strong here, and I wanted to put a counterbalance here. I feel like this is the same problem I have here, not problem, this is the same thing I have here with my dark brown twig and leaves. So let's just put something down here. That's a bit darker, and that resembles those leaves up here. Okay. I think I really have to stop myself at this point to not overwork the wreath, because it's so easily, it happens so easily. So what I said before, if you remember in the beginning when I pulled out the gold, that it would be really nice to add some details in gold. So why not do that? And of course, if you don't have a metallic watercolor gold, you can also just use a metallic jelly roll pen. And just add some golden dots in some spots of your wreath. Another option would be to add fine lines with a very small round brush. So for example, you could add some fine golden lines to your leaves or your floral petals. Okay, can you see the shimmer? I'm not sure how well that camera is picking it up, but I think it really adds a little extra. Okay, I think it would also really look good to add it to those dark leaves, so let's try that. Just the center vein. So for this stroke, again, I'm holding my brush upright, but this time I'm setting down my hand like this onto the paper. And then I'm dragging my brush from the bottom to the top. This is almost, I have pretty much a strong, like almost a vice grip on my brush here. So it's the opposite of what I showed you in the beginning with the flowing motion. I mean, of course, you could also try and do this line with the flowy motion, but chances are that your line is going to be all over the paper. So if you have only a small distance you want to paint, try this method. You place your hand down, and then you just do this movement. Just drag it across like that. See, it's just like this, and you can guide your brush because you have your hand on the paper like that. I'm going to turn the paper so I have easier access to my leaves here. And again, I'll set down my hand and just drag my hand, my brush, across the leaf. Oh, danke ihr Lieben. Thank you. Dankeschön. Mahalo. Arigato. Okay. So what do you think? The gold on the dark brown? It's pretty neat, huh? It would probably look even better if the leaves were darker. Then the contrast would be even more obvious. It would bring out the gold even more. But yeah, I like it. And with the gold, it's the same as with the rest of the wreath. Don't add too much. I think with golden accents, usually less is better. If you just have a few spots that are glittery, metallic shimmer, I think when Christmas comes around, you can add more glitter. You can add more gold. That's fine. But I think for this one, yeah, that's pretty good. I'm just thinking about the mushrooms. So possibly adding a little bit to the hat of the mushroom. Just like on the side here, kind of like a golden highlight shimmer. All right, that's it. I think that's enough. Gold geht immer. Yeah, at least a little bit. Oh, thanks, Tanya. Thank you, everybody. All right, so I think, looking at this, I think this is done. And you can always add some lettering to your wreaths. I think they just pretty much shout for something to write inside of them. Or if you have stamps, I think that also looks really neat. Or a combination of lettering and stamps. Okay, what's the date today? Is it the 21st? I don't even know. So my shop update is on the 24th, which is a Sunday, and today is Thursday, so yeah, it's the 21st. Okay. Right. You guys have no idea how long it took me to get used to the American way of writing the dates. You know, like in America, they put the month first and then the day. So I grew up in Europe where they put the day first and then the month. And man, it's still sometimes so confusing. I literally have to see where, you know, the piece of paper comes from when I look at the date. If it's something like 5/4, Is it April or is it May? I don't know. All right, okay. Just some superfluous information on this side. The little tiny everyday struggles of people coming to America. All right, tell me about your wreaths. How's it going? Have you finished? Are you still painting? How is it going? Oh, my mom just said they do that in Japan too. Month first. Huh. Well, let me tell you guys, in Japan, they also have a different system of dates. They actually also they count the years like we do with the is that the Gregorian calendar? You know, like we're in the year 2023 now, right? So in Japan, whenever they have a new emperor, whenever this new emperor comes to the throne, that's the year one. So I'm actually not sure which year Japan is on right now, maybe year 8 or 7 or something. So sometimes you will find products in the store that say, let's say, September 21st and then 8. Very confusing. Hmm. Okay. So I asked you guys about your wreaths, and Debbie says not bad, which, hey, that's good. Melly says she's gonna let it dry. Are you gonna add some stamps? I would love to see that. Sylvie's really happy. Oh God. Oh yeah, no, you go to bed. Sylvie, go to bed. It's late over in Germany, I know. I think you guys, I'm actually done. I mean, I don't know what to add anymore. I think this is looking pretty finished. And unless you have any urgent questions, I would call this session complete for today. And I only want to ask you to give me suggestions for live streams in the future, what you would like to see. So if you have any ideas or suggestions, just write me over on Instagram at the Aloha Studios, and I'm very happy to consider it. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining today. I hope you enjoyed the session. I hope you learned a little bit, had lots of fun. And I will see you again for the next live session. All right, keep well and aloha. Bye.